Good afternoon. Can you tell us your name
My name is Brad Sasher.
and what instrument do you play?
I am the principal second violin
With?
with the Atlanta Musicians Orchestra.
Got to get a plug in there, you know. uh, how long have you been playing with the AMO?
I think this is year number 5.
Yes, tell us a little bit about your background and schooling and where you went to school, what you studied.
Well, I actually am a high school graduate who joined the Army when I got out of high school, and I went into the Army band on saxophone, which was many moons ago. And when I got out of the Army, I quit playing the saxophone. And 15 years later, I decided to take up the violin.
That's a bit of a change.
What's interesting is I listen back now to all those songs I liked as a kid, as a teen. Almost all of them have strings in them of some sort. So
And
I had an affinity that I didn't even know about.
what sort of pieces attracted you in your early musical career?
Well, there were obviously it was mostly saxophone stuff, like Earl Bostic, and he would play things with the symphony orchestra. Charlie Parker did it, um, and then it even went into uh, Hurricane Smith.
Hmm.
Oh Babe, there was this song that was just a hit, and it had these great strings in the background, and a sax solo. So it's just the mixture of the two things together.
That was perfect for you. And so, how long ago was that you started the violin?
I started in 1995. I've had 9 teachers since 1995.
you,
And
you scare them off?
yes, many different versions of them,
Hmm.
and uh, some of them have been a whole lot of fun, and some of them have been very humbling because it's a difficult instrument.
Yeah. And what sort of pieces are you studying now?
I am actually doing mostly etudes and things that I didn't do 10 years ago. Uh, they seem to make a lot more sense to me now that I have some prowess on the instrument. After you get used to having it in your hands, you get used to the bow, and you get used to certain things. As an adult student, you kind of have to let that settle in a little bit. That's my opinion, anyway.
Right.
When you're, 4 years old, nothing settles in.
Yeah,
You
right.
just kind of burn through it all.
Are you still playing saxophone?
I do, yeah. I'm playing both instruments a good bit. My shoulder is giving me a little bit of grief on my bow arm, so I went and got a cortisone shot the other day. So we're moving forward.
Good, good.
Actually
Uh,
got to play last night.
oh, good. Just rehearsing on your own, practicing, or?
Just Maria and I playing a little thing that we've been working at a little bit, and I just wanted to see if my arm was going to work. And the D string is difficult because of the angle and the holding the arm up, but everything else is working.
Good for you. And you mentioned Maria. How did she start out playing?
She played as a youth, and probably up until she was about 18, I think, in India actually. And then she hadn't played for many, 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 many years until she met me. She played some here and there,
Mhm.
but then it became something different with me because I played all the time.
And so, do you practice together or separately?
We separately together we have violin dates, so we'll actually have things that we actually play together,
Mhm.
that we're working on, other than even the orchestra music or something else. We had books, and we have a whole tray of music that we went through and separated from all the music she had and I had. And so now we're kind of going through that every week or so and pick out something new and work it up. And some of it's, simple things like even a duet of Ashokan Farewell or something from the
Mhm.
the Civil War series. I don't know if you know that song.
Oh, sure. We played it with the
Yeah,
AMO. Yeah.
yeah.
How is it with both of you playing in the same section in the same orchestra?
Well, I think it probably differs greatly from the front to the back. I do honestly have the advantage of sitting next to, Avo and Dan, and some of that guides. It helps me, and probably sitting in the back where Maria is. Thank goodness we have some strong players back there too, because it kind of all there's a rapport you end up with throughout a section, and if you have uh, a gap where people can't hear it, they can't feel it or anything, then they kind of feel like they're out on the end of the branch a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. How do you feel about the mix and the temperature of the AMO and the personalities?
I think it actually has a very nice niche in that it's, there are little groups that play in churches and some of those places where people kind of get together and do stuff. But this is serious enough for people to actually feel serious about it. And I think we get good attendance, we get people to practice because it's actually at a high enough level that it more so interests everyone all the time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think there's enough of a challenge to keep people coming back, but it's not so difficult that we scare people away. How is it sitting up in the principal chair?
Well, I always make the joke that it's the hot seat, but it could be a hotter seat than it is. But sitting up front, you kind of have to have looked at your part and done what you should do as a principal, which is certainly play it at the best you possibly can, so that everyone around you kind of gets the fact that what's happening. Because sometimes the music, my motto is music waits for no one. Like once you start a piece, it's going to go, and you got to be there or not. And so when in the front chair, I kind of have to be with you. I have to be with the first violins and the violas. I mean, I kind of have to be in the right spots. And sometimes that means if I found myself, slightly in the wrong spot, then sometimes you kind of have to figure out how to wait a millisecond to catch it and land back on the right spot. And I don't know why, but I probably from the saxophone years in my life, I have a knack for being able to find my place again, even if it was something that was pretty difficult. So I'm fortunate.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because when you play another instrument, especially something like sax, which is more improv, I'm sure at certain times, you develop a whole different way of listening than just following the music in classical music. Yeah, I have to say that it's just really a pleasure when I look down and, I see individuals all the time, but, you and I seem to have a fun rapport and a serious one, but also one with a good sense of humor. And often that's really needed, with the orchestra.
Yeah.
And, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to look up and have you look at me at least fondly, and then I know that's like, okay, I'm all right then.
Yes, right. No, and you seem to work with the first very well, and the first seem to be very gracious in helping with the seconds too.
Yeah, they're really great and helpful.
Yeah, especially Dan, I think. Yeah, no, that's fabulous. What are some of the pieces that you've enjoyed most playing with the orchestra?
I'm a real fan of, actually, as hard as it was, the Rachmaninoff was really quite a challenge, and to have actually pulled it off was an accomplishment. And I felt like that lifted the orchestra entirely because we all went, wow, we played this.
Yeah, and played it well.
So it was, yeah. And so the thing about those pieces, and of course I love, Egmont, and I love all the Beethoven stuff. I have really probably remember mostly the Sassons when Ken Wagner and what's her, I can't remember.
Sheree Kruger.
Sheree, yeah. I remember those pieces, but I don't remember that piece musically. I almost remember it from a listener standpoint because French music kind of takes off, and it's not structured the same. So it's it's just a different listening and playing mode than most other music.
No, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, what do you think about when we have soloists come in?
Oh, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, everyone in the orchestra rises to the occasion to do their best for the soloists because, these most of them, and I think all of them are professionals, and so they're a different level than some of us, certainly a different level than most of us, but for us to be able to rise to the occasion seems to make it fun for them too, because they certainly want their performance to sound as good as possible. And that means the orchestra kind of has to hold its portion of that agreement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I find that I try and choose soloists who not only are excellent musicians, professionals, but also who teach, the way Ken and even Lucas and Sheree and all these, they're very generous professionals. And I think the orchestra enjoys that. Even if it's not their instrument, I think everybody gets something out of how to put it together and how to bring out all the nuances. Yeah, no, it's really fun. Well, where do you think we should go with the AMO once we get back?
I think to build repertoire and maybe have a few venues where you could go play that same concert that you play well in 3 different places. And this just came out of my mouth just now. I thought of it and I thought, wow, that would be really cool if we had, 6 great pieces that we do and do 3 different venues during a month or something.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think that's a brilliant idea also because it takes, 3 months to get us up to concert level. And it'd be nice to, utilize that expertise and that all that work and not just have it go away in one night. Other than let me ask you, what is your profession? You're full-time.
Well, I actually buy and sell things on eBay now, completely. And I did many things, but I was in retail for most of my career. And I ended up in the bicycle business and I got injured. Something that blew up in my face and messed my ears up. And I remember making the joke at that very point, and it wasn't really funny, but to me, it was kind of like, well, I can't hear very well now. I guess I'll have to play the saxophone again because I can at least hear it. Mm-hmm. And so I actually bought a saxophone and started playing again and took the violin, and I would take my earbuds, the ones that you're able to put inside your ear, and I would put one in the left ear and listen to the violin with my right ear. Then I would switch after about 20 minutes to the next one and play the same thing over and over and over and over, and ears and blocking and trying to re-listen to things that I had lost. Apparently there was some damage in the right ear, so things were missing. And I noticed it when I had listened to a little ditty thing that I recorded, and there was a trill, do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and I listened back to it, and all I heard was do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I only heard one note, and I know I played 2. So that's when I started doing this, plugging one ear in the other, and then playing the saxophone, and my ears changed. I still have hearing loss, but I've actually gotten the tonality back where I can hear what's actually going on.
I think that's quite amazing. So you sort of retrained your ears and your brain, I guess, in a certain way, to get back up to snuff as much as you could. And
yeah.
You certainly show that when you play. That's excellent. That's pretty amazing. It must have. How long a period of time was that?
I did that for about 6 months. In a quiet environment every day, kind of a thing, and then I just kind of segued back into playing and listening as normal. Some acoustical rooms are different for my ears than others, but I'm starting to. I've been able to hear the same way, almost regardless of the environment, with the instrument. Now, with voices, it's completely different. There are voices that I can hear and some that I, even I can tell the word is being spoken, but I can't tell what the word is being said,
Hmm.
which is
Well,
really kind of odd. So there's still something there, but I have hearing aids now, and they actually make a big difference.
yeah, yeah. That's quite a story. That's really interesting. So you're buying and selling. You seem to be you've become a real expert both in saxophones and in violins. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, yeah, and I really have learned a lot by the mistakes that I made. Sometimes you buy something and think you bought one thing and something else shows up, or and some of those blindly buying things on eBay, sometimes things photograph really well, and
Yeah.
they aren't nearly as pretty when you get them.
Right.
So I've had to learn how to uh, be very picky about the photographs because I'm buying stuff mostly sight unseen. I don't have
Mm.
the advantage of picking it up and going, "Oh, look at this."
Right.
And so, I've made mistakes, and there's things that I have done that, um, have taught me some valuable lessons. But I've also learned some things about really better instruments because I lucked out and have ended up with something way better than what I
Mm.
thought it was as well. And then so you kind of look at that, and then you go, well, look at this one, and then look at this one. Well, this one has this, and it has that, and you kind of start to analyze them, violins especially, almost like a painting.
Mm.
There's a certain craft and artisanship to the way they're made that become their identity. Like you can actually look at it and go, oh, this is, such and such. I still can't say, oh, I think this one's Italian, this one's German, this one's such and such, because as soon as I say that, it's not true. But there are things about it that might be, it looks like it could be, it's
Yeah.
always this speculation.
Sure. But you can't hear them, I guess. Did you ever ask anybody to, record or play them on Skype?
No, because I have not felt that it ever translated well at all.
Mm. Yeah, you're probably
It's
right.
just the audio and all that. And with my hearing issues anyway, um, the other thing is that the fine dealers in the world that sell the finest instruments and all of those things, the instruments are provenance with letters and things like this, and they're based on their value by what they are, not how they sound.
Right.
So the sound is almost irrelevant to a point
Yeah.
until it becomes in a player's hands and he's looking for a certain sound. Well, then you and pick 10 or 20 and you want it to sound a certain way. But it's always in a price range, and there are some that aren't going to sound good, and they're still worth a lot of money.
Mm. Interesting. You've posted some pictures and shared some pictures of some really beautiful instruments, both the saxophone and the violin. Is there any one or two in each category that you remember especially?
Well, I do, and one of them I have kept, and it's one that I bought from the previous concertmaster of the Atlanta Symphony. His name was Martin Sasher.
Hmm.
Marty had one violin that he played for real in the orchestra, and then he had another one that looked like it that he played at Chastain when it was raining.
Hmm.
Well, that one is the one I bought. It was
Hmm.
sitting and hanging in a violin shop, and I saw it from long distance, and I thought, what is that? So I got to talk to him on the phone. I decided to buy it, and at the time, didn't have a whole lot of, money sitting in the bank. So I went on a payment plan with him, and I paid him $100 a month for many years to buy this instrument.
Wow.
Uh, and one of my teachers, who's become one of my great friends, suggested that I take the violin to Chicago and get some work done to it because it had been
Hmm.
sitting under the bed. It needed some help. Well, lost in translation, and I'm not sure why. The guy ended up doing everything to the violin that you would do if it was a Stradivarius. He
Hmm.
took plaster casts and he untwisted the back and the top and the this and the that. And the next thing I know, I don't have my violin back, and it's been several years. And I called him up and was like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, you can have your violin back, but you owe me $15,600 for what I did to your violin." And I was like, well, I don't have $15,000. And it sat there for 10 years. And the interesting part of my injury story from work was that was workman's comp, and I actually did get some funds for the fact that I was injured. And the third thing I did was go to Chicago and get my violin back, and he took less than $15,000. But the thing was there; it was gone for 10 years, and now it's back.
Have you played it with us at the orchestra yet?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so it's the one you bring in.
It's the one I usually play. I have a the newfound friend though. I have another one now that I'm just crazy about. And what I've discovered is that this particular one is the second one is smaller than the other one. So the shifts are not the same, and you kind of have to decide which one you're going to play and really stick to it, or third position's just never going to be in the right place.
Right, right.
So I've kind of stuck to this one now for 6 months to play everything I'm playing so that I can hear it.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, that's quite an array of professions and sub-professions. But if you had to choose another profession, totally different, what would you choose?
You know, that's a really so difficult because I have so many things that I've been, blessed enough to be able to learn and do all these things that the busyness of that is almost what keeps me going. I think if I tried to pick one thing, I think I might end up really bored to death. And so I can't really say that I have one thing. I mean, I was able to do, clothing is where I met you the first time many years ago, and I switched from men's to women's clothing. And the one thing that I did when I worked for Saks Fifth Avenue in the women's department was I was able to find the right dress for the woman and what she was trying to convey. So I don't know why I had any of those skills, but I always just ended up picking the right thing for this person. And so then they would go out into the world or go out on their date or whatever that they were doing, and I would always get reports back that what I had picked really worked for them. So I was really fond of that kind of, I guess, an acceptance, being that it was a little different for me, to have been in the women's wear business. But I really enjoyed that probably the most. So, I might like to do that again.
Well, that actually brings something up. I was talking to Honora about the interview coming up, and she really thinks the world of you. And she said, if it's not too personal, ask Brad, because she does a lot of things with sensory, theater and so on. When you lost some use of your hearing, and this discussion about the women's clothing, did your other senses increase in some way? And if so, how did you notice it?
Well, I've actually even thought about that as of late and wondered if my eyesight became more acute, or my taste, smell and taste and things. And I can't say that I noticed any difference in any of them. And I would think that I would have, but I think that it may be something. You know how someone in their youth loses their eyesight, and all of a sudden, while they're growing, their other things are heightened. They get, their hearing becomes better, or there's something that compensates for the fact that they lost something. And I being that I was, 50 years old when it happened, I haven't noticed an increase, or anything that was different or better in those regards. And I found it interesting that I didn't.
Yeah, yeah. What's your favorite quote?
This one, and I'm sorry it's not so serious because I don't really have a serious quote, but I have a quote that Maria said at our wedding, and I dared her to do it. And the quote was, once the preacher says to her, you know, blah 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 blah, do you take? And I told her, I said, what you do is when you say I do, I want you to say after that, he will. And so at the wedding, she really said, I do, he will. And it was one of the funniest things ever.
I think that's great. I think it's lovely.
So that's my favorite quote.
That's fantastic. Well, let me ask you on that note, if heaven exists, what would you like God or St. Peter to say to you as you reach the pearly gates?
I think I would like to hear that you were a good person. You tried to do the right thing, even though you didn't always. But welcome. You'll find it even easier up here.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you
do
very
too.
much. Maria too, yeah. She just said, yeah, thank you for everything you do. Really, it's just one of the joys of my life coming to play. And really, it's just a big deal.
Thank you. Thank you. Same for me.